Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and welcome to another YouTube video. Today, I'm actually joined today by a special guest that has been a friend of mine for about 3 years now. It's really, really crazy. We're doing another film journey. This time we're with SJSFilms. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you, Nathan?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's early morning where I'm at. I think it's in the afternoon where you are, right?
Yeah, it's like 4:30 now.
4:30. It's like 10 in the morning, 10:30 for me. But it's my day off, so I'm feeling okay. So what are you up to right now?
Not much. I've been just chilling for the whole summer, basically at home and watching some films and reading some books lately. I've been more into literature lately, and
yeah, I've noticed some of your more recent videos on YouTube have been book related. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, because that's a art form that I don't have as much experience as with films, so I kind of want to hone that side of my knowledge as well. As I've always had this quest of becoming a snob, so I need to have my literature knowledge up there as well, and not just the film knowledge.
Yeah, I totally get that snob mentality of trying to consume as much knowledge as I can. Luckily, films are, I feel like, easier to do because you have less time to spend with them. But like, like novels or literature it's something that I want to do better myself. But as you probably know, and many of the people watching this, I'm Nathan. I'm so busy Jones that I have no time to try to read. So I'm impressed, buddy.
Yeah, and it's the same with music, also, and it has been for years. I mean, that's even easier than film, I think, because you can just listen to like a 40-minute album, for example. So it's even shorter than a film.
Yeah, and you can be doing something else as you're listening as well. And so it's nice. Actually, you and I both have very similar taste in music, don't we?
Yeah, so that's nice about your channel, because I think the rest of the film community in YouTube don't really like metal, at least as far as I know. So
yeah. There's very few of us out there, but I hope there's more. We gotta bring them over to the dark side a little bit further. Keep going and showing them the horns, right? And we got to make sure that they understand that there's a power here, just like there is in movies too, right?
Yeah, everyone needs some technical death metal in their lives.
Oh, absolutely. And if people like classical music, like, you can get into metal. Come on, you know. So it's complicated, but it's fun. All right, so today, we're talking about your film journey, and so I'm excited to know more about this, because I know some of these answers, because knowing you over the years, you've answered some of these in some of your videos, and times we've talked. But I'm curious to know, like, kind of the full picture. And so I guess we'll begin with, what is one of your earliest memories with film? Do you remember?
Pokemon films.
Pokemon films. Nice.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Pokemon, and it was a really big thing in Finland. I still have like 1,500 cards from like the late 90s and early 2000s. And I meant all of those three films basically. I haven't seen all of the like later ones, but the first three are the ones that I watched over and over again. I especially love the first one the most, probably.
Yeah, the first one. So you were in Finland when this happened, right? And when you watched it when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also fast forwarding to 2016 when Pokemon Go was like released. Like, I got the Pokemon thing back for a while, and I was kind of like scrolling through my Pokemon cards and stuff, and going to play Pokemon Go, and even like rewatching the series for a bit. So
yeah, I actually recently got the first season. They just reminds me of when I was growing up too. Did you go to the theater to see the first movie?
No, I watched it at home. Like, I had the VHS.
Oh, nice.
All of them, so.
Did you ever? So are a lot of your movie memories kind of early on just at home, like just remembering watching all?
Yeah, I don't actually remember going to the cinema that much when I was younger. I saw films like Ice Age, the third one, I think, in cinema, and then I saw I don't know if you know the film with the two like tigers. It's called like Two Brothers. That's like a children's film. Yeah, that's one of the earliest ones I remember seeing. in the cinema itself, but mostly I watched films at home because my father had a huge VHS collection, and he also had some DVDs like after, but it was mostly VHS stuff. And then he also recorded stuff from the TV when there was something on, and also when there was something on, I watched some films. Like when I was 8 years old, I watched Hitchcock's Birds.
Oh,
and
wow.
I actually haven't seen it since. I need to rewatch
so
it.
Scary.
But yeah, I still remember some images of the film, even though it's been like 50 years or something. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So Birds, that makes me think of. I watched Birds for the first time in middle school, and I remember very vividly some of the scenes from that movie scaring the hell out of me. So, is that why you just like I haven't watched it since?
No, I just haven't had the right time, and there are just some of those films that you always want to rewatch, but you just don't for some reason. It's the same with Rear Window. Like I saw it like 6 years ago. It's still on my favorite films list, but I haven't like rewatched it since for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh my God, that's a whole nother conversation actually. Like loving something so much, one of your favorite films, and haven't watching it in the longest time. There's something to that. I feel like I'm guilty of that. Some of your favorite films. How often do you rewatch films?
Not too often, because I want to kind of grow my knowledge all the time. So I try to watch things that I haven't seen yet, and also I have like a list of shame. That's what I call it. So like big classics that I haven't seen yet. It's not that huge anymore, the list, because I've watched so much stuff from all over the world, and from most of the great directors I've seen at least some films. So I'm at a really good point at the moment, but there's still obviously some big classics that I haven't seen. I haven't seen the Coker trilogy, for example, and I know that you love it and some other people love it, but maybe I'll get the Criterion at some point. It's released in the UK too, so it's nice.
Yeah, no, I certainly like, there's some stuff on my list as well that I still haven't seen. Like yesterday, I watched Robocop for the first time, and a lot, and like I haven't even like talked about it yet, but like it's something that is like an 80s classic, and especially in America, and I just finally watched it. And I mean, no, that's not like a classic film or anything, but there are some films that I'm like completely blinded by, so I get that. And I think the cool thing about this whole film journey series, but also just the fact that we're on watching films, right, in general, that are classics, is we don't really pick the times to watch them, right? Like they kind of come to us.
Yeah. And if we go back to my childhood years, Robocop was a film that I watched when I was a kid, but I haven't seen it since. And my father really loved it, and it was one of his favorite films, I remember. But I haven't seen it in over a decade. So.
Yeah, well, it's a good movie, and I'm surprised I haven't seen it until now. But yeah, it's something. It's a very violent movie, but like especially if I was younger, I'd be like, man, that was a lot. But that's perfectly fine. I'm okay now. I just like metal. That's the most violent I am.
Yeah.
Right. So any other like kind of early memories, like you said Pokemon, Two Brothers. You have any other memories like back home watching films?
Yeah, there are so many. Because film was one of my favorite hobbies even when I was a kid. So I obviously watched many of the like cartoons and stuff. So I love like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for example. I like the original one, but I also like I don't remember what's the exact name of it, but it's the series from like early 2000s. So that was my favorite, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. I think that I even rewatched it like when I was in my mid-teens, and I still liked it then. Yeah. And then there's other stuff like that. So there's Digimon. That was one thing that it didn't stick around for people like Pokemon did. Right. But it was really popular for a bit. And I loved Digimon even more than I loved Pokemon. Like,
yeah. I know some people in my life that are very similar with that. They're like, I got to give respect to Digimon more than I can for Pokemon. And yeah. I just always think it's funny because, like obviously there's on the kind of the losing side of that whole thing, even though they're not really related besides the fact that Mon is involved in their cartoons. But Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that I have a lot of friends who really love Digimon still. Yeah.
And I think Pokemon for me, it was kind of too cutesy because it's all about Pikachu and Squirtle and Bulbasaur, but I wanted them to evolve to be like Venusaur and
Yeah.
Blastoise, but they stayed cutesy. But Charizard has always been my favorite Pokemon, so I was
Yeah.
glad that yeah, about that. So
No, I get that. Yeah, you can kind of yell at the TV as you're like, why are you making this stupid mistake? Like, and if anybody, like, I'm sure some people are maybe lost when we're talking about this, but there's like, Ash would make these really dumb mistakes of like, let's put a Pikachu against an Onix, which is like an electric versus a rock type, and just would make no sense, especially in the context if you played the video game, and then you're just like, why would you do that? And then he somehow just stupidly wins because it's that hero trope that you get in all these shows or movies that we have, and it's really funny, and you kind of get mad at how stupid all the characters are.
yeah, but there's this fan theory that Ash is in a coma and he's just like imagining everything. So that would make sense that everything would be stupid, like Pikachu going against Onix if it's just if Ash is in a coma. Yeah.
So transitioning from there, so when would you realize that like you got obsessed with film?
It's kind of hard to say. It depends like what we mean by obsessed. I guess I started to like think about the filmmaking side when I was in my mid-teens. So when I was like 16 years old, like I watched the popular like film reviewing YouTube channels like Chris Tuckman and the Flick Pick, and that kind of sparked the interest for the kind of more mainstream classics. So I watched the stuff like Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption that like more even general film goers would like.
Right.
But then also I think like if we talk about specific films that really got me into cinema, one was The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had this kind of period like when I was around 16 that I really liked those kind of psychological thrillers, and so I watched like Shutter Island by Martin Scorsese. I really enjoyed that, and then The Shining. Like I had seen The Shining for the first time when I was 10 years old. I had like an older friend that showed it to me, but I was just expecting that it was all about like the axe murders and stuff like that. But obviously Jack Nicholson only kills one person in the film.
Right.
But then when I rewatched it when I was 16, my mother also really loves the film. It's her favorite film of all time too, and it's mine too, by the way.
Oh,
I know
awesome.
you were gonna ask it later, but
yeah.
So so that was the film that probably is responsible for my film love the most.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's a nice transition because you say like, is it that earliest memory, like, because you said you watched it when you're 10, and so with your friend, and did you realize that this was your mom's favorite film after that or before that?
After that, I didn't really talk about films with my mother when I was younger. It was mostly my father back then, but nowadays my mother knows that I'm a big cinephile, and I sometimes I show her some films when I go back to Finland, like for a holiday and stuff. But so now we watch The Shining like every time I go to Finland. So now I've seen it 20 times.
Oh wow, that's a cool tradition to do that with your mom.
Yeah, but now I've had a longer break from the film because of the virus situation, because I haven't been able to go to Finland since early January. So I haven't seen The Shining since then.
So you're starting to feel like Jack a little bit because you've been keyed up.
Yeah, but I can quote half of the film still, so I don't know it so well, so I don't really have to watch it. But
did you ever watch Dr. Sleep?
No, I'm refusing to watch. Okay. Watch that. Yeah.
That's okay. I get it. I watched the extended version, which is apparently the better version to watch. I missed it when I was in China myself. But yeah, I was kind of curious. So like, do we really want to go back here, or do you want to just leave this alone? But yeah, that's really cool that you were able to. You're still able to do that. I mean, obviously, once this virus kind of goes away, I hope that you're able to continue that tradition. That's really, really cool.
At Christmas, it will happen.
Yeah. Ooh, Christmas time. That's even better.
Yeah, actually, last time I think we watched it on Christmas Eve.
Oh, that's awesome.
And in Finland, actually, the Christmas Eve is the main day, not Christmas Day. So that's the kind of main day when you get all the presents and stuff. So then in the evening, we watch The Shining.
That's a good way to end the day, and there's something that Santa would want. So, you know, shoot. Now this is making me think. Like, do you have any? You know, you said you realized as you were older, talking to your mom about some of these films that you're a cinephile now. But do you remember once that transition part? Like you were talking about when you were watching maybe something like Chris Stuckman or FlickPick. I mean, I have similar, memories of my own doing the same kind of thing, where I was watching maybe more Christopher Nolan films, maybe some David Fincher films, more of the psychological types as well. Did you notice a transition where you're like, okay, maybe I want to go beyond this? Do you remember any of those films that maybe you thought that?
Yeah. So after like a couple of years after that, fact that I started to becoming like more interested in film, then I started to watch the like older classics, but it was still only like Hollywood stuff mostly. So I watched like Hitchcock stuff. So I watched all of the big Hitchcock films like Psycho. I had seen that bit earlier actually, but then I watched Rear Window, like I said earlier, and then Dial for Murder, Vertigo, obviously, which is my personal favorite, and
it's a good one.
And then Rope. That happened a bit later, but that's actually a very underrated one, and it's one of my favorite films in general.
That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I was talking about those back in the early days of my channel, the Hitchcock films?
Yeah, vaguely.
Vaguely, yeah. Around that time.
Set, I think.
Yeah, that box set's nice. I think I have the Canadian / UK version of it, but no, Rope. You're absolutely right. That's the underrated. Like, that's one of my favorite films. I don't know, just the whole situation scenario, knowing the murderers at first and like having that anticipation of like, are they going to get caught, is just really cool, So Hitchcock, right? So you watch a lot of those Hollywood classic films first, and then started going deeper and deeper into this interest of, like, I guess one of your latest videos, you talked a little bit about like your new shaky and rocky kind of road into French cinema, right? Yeah. So like you're diving deeper into, some of those more auteurs and maybe filmmakers that are a little bit more experimental now.
Yeah, I really don't like mainstream stuff anymore. Like, I've now become like the true snob elitist that I've always wanted to become. So like this year, I think this is the first year that I've watched more world cinema than Hollywood films. So I've watched lots of French films, probably like maybe 40 or something this year. And then Japan is my favorite country for cinema, so I always watch lots of Japanese films. And there are Korean films, Italian films, and I obviously, now that I live in the UK, I really like to watch Finnish films as well, because it kind of gives that comforting feeling to me, to kind of take me back to my home country when I watch some Finnish films here as well. And then obviously there's Ingmar Bergman. He's one of my favorite directors, my top 3. And so I've seen 20 of his films, even though I don't even have the box set, but I've still seen like half of the films in the box set. Right. So, yeah.
So I guess, it's funny, we've been naturally kind of answering the questions that I normally ask with like what you're currently watching and whatnot. So I this year you said you've been watching a lot more world cinema. So what are you like currently watching at this moment of transition for you?
Yeah, I haven't watched that many films lately, actually. Like I said, I've been more into literature. But if we take the whole year, I've seen almost 500 films this year.
Oh, wow.
Because I had this goal, because I always look at the letterbox numbers, how many films I've seen in total. Like my letterbox number has almost every film I've ever seen. So this year I had the goal of making 2,000. And I surpassed that goal like a couple months ago, but I thought that I would surpass it like late in the year, but I was just watching films and films and films, so many films that I surpassed the goal in the summer. So after that goal, I've kind of been chilling a bit more, because there was some really intense film watching, like in the spring and winter. Like it was often like 3 art house films a day and
Oh wow,
stuff like that. Yeah.
that's probably pretty psychological too, because it's just all that heavy, dense material just getting thrown at you, 3 times a day, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
now
I
you're,
could mention.
yeah.
Yeah. I could mention a couple of films that I watched this past weekend. So I rewatched Moonlight. I hadn't seen it since I saw it in the big screen back in when it came out. I think it came out like early 2017 in Finland. Obviously, it came out
Okay.
a bit earlier in the US. But lots of the Oscar-type films like come out after the Christmas in Europe, so a bit later. But anyway, so I rewatched it. I had wanted to rewatch it for a while now, and I saw it was on Netflix, so I wanted to rewatch it, and I really still liked it. It has amazing cinematography, I think, and it's a very simple story, but still so it's like easy to connect to it, and like the characters are amazing. I mean, the main character, obviously, you have the 3 different actors, and I think all the 3 different actors are so amazing in the film, and it's definitely one of the better like American films of the past decade, I think. Like
Yeah.
I'm not too happy with the state of American cinema these days, but that's like a one exception that's really good.
Sure. Now that, like, talking about Barry Jenkins and, that film in particular, is there something like, I noticed you talking about like the cinematography and like the acting. Is there a specific thing that you kind of like? I guess I'll start actually earlier. So when you were, growing up and watching film, like with, maybe more of like the animation, the cartoons more oriented, was there like a certain aesthetic thing that you liked about it? That led eventually to like liking the specifics of film, like cinematography, photography, the way that the nonverbals act. Is there anything in particular that you could shine a light on that?
Well, when I was a kid, it was all about the entertainment value, basically. So just what was entertaining, and I had that kind of forbidden fruit thing that I wanted to watch films that I shouldn't watch as a kid. So I watched lots of horror films and action films that I probably shouldn't have watched when I was really young. So there was that aspect, but I don't think there was like anything then that would like influence my later tastes in film. But I think the cinematography thing, for example, is just something that you kind of develop after you have just watched many visually appealing films. Like it takes years and years to train that eye. And I think in the last couple of years, I've really got that eye for cinematography now. Like now I'm kind of analyzing like every shot in the film. Like should this be a little bit more to the left or right? And like these kind of minor things for some people, or if there's bit shakiness in a shot, like I really hate that. I prefer still shots. I like films that are pretty much still shots only, or that kind of Kubrick style, that very methodical style, like that. That's
Right.
my type of cinematography. Yeah. And Kubrick was one, obviously, a director whose all of his films look amazing, and that was a big reason that was a big thing that kind of developed my eye, I think, because I watched so many Kubrick films, as he is my favorite director and has been for many years. So.
Yeah. What's your favorite Kubrick? I guess Shining. So that
Yeah,
makes
because
sense.
it's my favorite film of all time.
I already answered my question. Is there any other like I can think of, and I'm sure that other people can talk about this too, but both Elliot and Elliot Cohen are huge fans of Barry Lyndon. Are you a fan of that film?
Yeah, it's on my favorites list too. So there are like 5 Kubrick films, I think, that are on my favorites list. So my favorite is The Shining, then Paths of Glory, then 2001: Space Odyssey after that. Those 3 are on my like top 15 of all time. So I'm a huge Kubrick fan. Then Clockwork Orange is also on my top 20. I also love the book. And then Barry Lyndon is like somewhere in my top 50.
Right.
And also actually Full Metal Jacket is on my favorites list too. But yeah, but anyway, so those are the Kubrick films that I love the most. And obviously Doctor Strangelove is great, but I just think that I need to rewatch it a couple more times to really get all the nuances in the humor and stuff. And
right.
Yeah.
It's definitely some social critique of that Cold War era, especially in America, and kind of the kind of that fight between Russia, which I should think is really interesting. But no, I actually, you know, talking about cinematography and whatnot, like you said, you focus a little bit more on that, and like thinking about like maybe this should be to the left a little bit, or maybe this should be to the right a little bit. That focus, like, I guess, is there any films in particular besides something like Kubrick, or maybe like Barry Lyndon, or not? Sorry, that's Kubrick. I meant to say Moonlight, where you would see cinematography and you would think it's like, well, like I would shoot this completely different.
Well, I just watched a Cassavetes film, Woman Under the Influence, and that cinematography, like it looks awful. Like I actually love the film. It made my favorites list. Like my friend recommended it to me for our podcast. But I love the film otherwise, the performances and everything. But the cinematography, it has that very experimental shakiness and that kind of very cheap look to it, which I hate. Like like I said, I love still shots. And I hate even like the smallest shakiness in the camera. And that, yeah, and it has also very weird angles. But other than that, the film is amazing, but I would definitely change the cinematography.
So I guess the ultimate question is, what do you look for in a film now? Like, obviously you have kind of an idea, like you're getting to the ultimate snobbery, right? That's the ultimate goal. But I guess, you know, when you're watching a film, like in your current state where you're at right now, obviously you're interested in books, which honestly is a deeper knowledge than a film to some extent, because you get more context, more pages, more things to elaborate on. Is there something that you're looking for that's deeper?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing about films for me these days is that they just need to have that thematic depth. Like if the films are just completely shallow and they just have very surface level themes, I don't think films like that can really be masterpieces to me. Like a masterpiece has to have all those great elements in a film, and I think that just the message and the thematic depth and the layers, that's probably like the most important thing in like art house cinema and classic cinema. And so that's very important to me nowadays, and that's why I don't like someone like Tarantino that much anymore, because obviously it's more just the entertainment value and style over substance.
Right.
Yeah, I can still enjoy Tarantino films, but when we are like thinking of what are the greatest films of all time, or what I want to watch most of the time, it needs to have all those great elements, and the thematic depth again is for me very important.
Is there, I guess, that thematic depth, does that like lead to like you want to have some kind of emotional reaction to it?
But I'm a very stoic person. Like I haven't cried in over a decade, so for me it's like hard to like really connect to films like very emotionally. But obviously there are some exceptions. But and obviously there are many emotions. Like, but when we talk about being emotional, you usually mean that it needs to like touch your heart.
Right.
But obviously there are emotions like angriness or whatever. So I think films can give me that like good mood. For example, when I watch something really good, like I get that fascination and that kind of childhood curiosity back. So in that way, they give me some like emotional impact as well, but not in a way that I'm just gonna start crying or.
Right.
Like, but there's nothing wrong to cry for films, but it's just not me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Honestly, I was very similar to you, especially when I was a lot younger, where nothing made me like, because you initially when you think of emotion, especially with film, most people are like, it's like, oh, did you cry? Did it touch your heart? Right? But like you said, there's other emotions too. Like some films just make you really angry, or some films just like turn you into a child, where you're like, it's like, wow, it's like I'm so interested in what's going on just from the sheer fact that like I don't know what's going to happen next. I think that's really interesting. That like that's the thing I like about film. I don't know about you, but I think that it allows for multiple perspectives to be had, and like you can reevaluate yourself within a film, right? Or how you interpret it.
Yeah, definitely. You can change your political opinions, for example, or just your thoughts on philosophy, or just how you look at things, or even your family or friends. So films can have a very big impact, I think. And one emotion that I could mention actually is nostalgia. You could say that that's an emotion, and I'm a very like a nostalgic person, even now when I'm only 23, but I already look at my childhood in a very nostalgic way, I guess. And also one more thing about the not getting too emotional with films for me is that obviously like I had a rougher childhood, so like I'm kind of used to kind of big kind of sad events in my own life. So when I'm just see some film, like that doesn't affect me that much because I've kind of developed a tolerance in my real life for those kind of bigger events. So I think that's one aspect that kind of prohibits me like from like having that big emotional experience.
Yeah. I was going to say that, you know, that brings up something really interesting too, because as I think anybody who's watching this right now can understand that every one of us has like different backgrounds on how we can, you know, engage with the stuff that we read or what we watch. And I think that, you know, some things are a little bit more powerful than others, or, you know, just based on our own life experiences. And I think that's really interesting to know, because as somebody who maybe I'm not as, I haven't really had very much tribulation growing up, terribly too much. I can't terribly relate. I have more of a surface level with some things. And there's only a few films that really reach that emotional level for me, because it kind of relates to something that like, oh, I can relate to that because that impacted my life, right? I kind of feel like that's the cool thing about film, but also one of the things that really can challenge us as a film goer, because we're not able to engage well with it because it might, you know, get a reaction that we've experienced in our own life that you're like, I don't really want to go there again, you know. I know about you.
Yeah, and I could mention like a couple of exceptions that I have to this. So The Lion King, for example, like I used to get really emotional due to that because I can relate to it, because like my own father passed away when I was 15 years old. So I can relate to that death scene when Mufasa dies. So that was really hard for me, like when I was rewatching the film. Sometimes like I rewinded that scene and stuff, or because I didn't want to see it, or I skipped the scene. So basically,
right.
And then the other one is, I mean, this doesn't have like a personal emotional thing, but Brian De Palma's Carrie. I think that's just a very sad film, like when you see what happens to the SpaceX character. So that had like a big emotional impact on me when I watched that film, and I actually haven't watched it since because I'm kind of scared to watch it, because I think I might not have as much of a profound experience now when I rewatch it, because there are some of those films that when you watch them for the first time, you have a great experience. Me and my like best friend call this like a movie truck experience, when you're just completely enthralled by the film. But then it's hard to replicate that in like subsequent viewings. So sometimes you can be scared to rewatch some films.
Yeah, I feel like that could be a whole conversation in itself too. You call it movie truck experience?
Yeah. My friend came up with it, but we always use that. So
yeah, I mean, I have several of those memories, mostly in theaters, usually when I'm by myself, just because I can kind of whisk the world away, you know, and like I'm not busy with other things. But that's very rare, and I haven't rewatched a lot of films that I really love, because I have that fear of going back and being like, well, is it going to be the same experience that I had the first time I watched it? So I can relate.
Yeah, for me, like seeing films on the big screen, yeah, that's a thing that kind of helps with the movie truck experiences, or it kind of makes them more likely. Like for example, in London, there's this great cinema called BFI South Bank, which showed these kind of art house and classic films. So I always go to watch these like greatest films of all time there. So even like watching those films at home, it would be likely to get the movie track experience, but when you see them on the big screen, it makes it even more likely. So for example, I saw Volkapout. That's even on Criterion Collection. That's the Nicholas Roeg film.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that on big screen, that was a movie track experience, for example. Yeah.
So I guess this naturally leads to like, what do movies mean to you now? Like, do they just inform you, just like kind of like books, to like what's going on in the world?
Yeah, I would say obviously it's one of my main hobbies still. I would say it's only second to music. Like music is the only thing I slightly prefer to films. But then it just like gives me so many things. Like for example, I met my best friend through film. Like we were watching Daisuke's one of his live streams, and we met on the live chat, and then we just randomly started talking on Letterboxd, and we met like that. And he's like the best friend I've ever had. So that's like the power of like how film. Like we were just discussing film, and then we became best friends. So that's like one thing that's really profound, I think. And also it just gives me that intellectual stimulation and that feeling of being better than everyone else because you know so much about films. That's part of being a snob, obviously, that you just, I don't like those regular people. They just watch Marvel films all the time and they listen to music. Yeah.
Yeah, I can slightly relate. I honestly, here's the thing too. You know, your ultimate form of snobbery is what you're trying to get to. I can feel that too because I honestly I feel like there is this weird thing with people who like metal. There's where we just want to be better than everyone else because we put the time and the effort into going into maybe reading or listening to music, stuff that like will definitely challenge the conventional kind of ways of thinking. And that's, I think, for film, for me, like obviously people who are watching this now, they know this side of me. That all comes from my love of like music and books and like just trying to constantly dig for knowledge. I love it.
But for me, it's kind of actually a funny story how my quest for snobbery began. So I watched the soap opera series, The OC. Yeah. So that obviously it's about these rich people in Orange County, and they are very, very intelligent. Like they even mention in one episode films like Showa and The Seventh Seal and Battleship Potemkin, even though there are some rich American kids in like private high school. I'm sure that they watch like Showa every day there and stuff in real life. But that was like, because that was my favorite TV series when I was younger, and I still absolutely love it for some reason.
There's guilty pleasures.
Yeah. But that was like when I realized that I really want to go to like a university and read all the books, and like I thought that the university culture was all about like high art and stuff, even though it's not in real life. But maybe it's in like Harvard or something. But not where I went to university. But
not where I teach either.
Yeah. But that TV series was the kind of way for me to get that goal to become a snob. And also, like I moved to like out of my own country largely because of the OC, because that gave me that dream to move to the US at first, but it's really hard to move to the US from Europe if you don't have like much money and stuff. So I kind of had to abandon that dream and move to the UK instead. But the OC is actually responsible for many things in my life. So, and this kind of relates to the previous question, I guess, that they can have TV shows and movies can have such a profound impact on you. So, like I chose to go to university because of that originally.
Wow. Yeah. That's a wonderful story. And I love that it's connected to the OC.
You know? It's embarrassing, but fun.
Yeah, no, it's good. You know, yeah, I can't think of anything very similar to my own experience with some of my, I have guilty pleasures too, but not ones that have impacted me that I can think about where it's led me to a specific area in life. And but you know, I think it's wonderful that stuff like this has made like a positive impact on your life. I think that's excellent, and I'm glad that you're still pursuing education in the University of Snobbery. You know, that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah. And now I'm actually going to a more prestigious university after this. So who knows, maybe all the people there will be like about film and art, but probably not.
Well, just remember the small people like me, you know.
Yeah.
all the people on YouTube, hopefully. So yeah, so I guess film today and books and music are something that's really, really important to you, and is continuing to do that. Do you ever see, I guess, where's your end goal with all this, if there is even an end goal?
Well, in like 3 years, I want to finish the whole Criterion collection, for example. So I've seen now like over 400 Criterion films. So I still have like, if you count all the Laserdisc stuff and everything, I would have like 2/3 to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
Yeah, so but some of them are short films too. So, but that's one of my goals, and obviously I just want to keep growing my knowledge and learning more. And I also really want to pick up some film books at some point, because I think that's kind of one of my weaknesses, that I haven't read many like film related books, and they're very expensive, like compared to, for example, like fiction books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like something like I like be like $50 or something, and so out of the student budget, it's kind of hard to afford that. But at some point, I really want to read like about specific directors, for example, but obviously you can access that stuff online, and I know lots of that stuff that would be in the books, but
Mm-hmm.
that would be like a further learning tool for me. And then just watching all the possible classics that I haven't seen yet. And I have some weaknesses, like I need to watch more Chinese cinema, for example. I've seen like, if we count like Taiwan, Hong Kong and China together, I've seen like Edward Yang films and Bong Kar-wai and Hard Boiled and stuff like that, but there are still so many that I need to watch. And then just watch films like even more broadly. Like I watched films from pretty much everywhere in the world. I've even now seen my first African film, but so yeah, just furthering my knowledge is the main thing, I think.
Yeah, and that just leads to, like, honestly, the reason like I wanted to talk to you, besides the fact that we've been friends for the longest time, and we just haven't had the time to talk, but I think it's something that's really, really interesting that's going on, especially in this community in particular, with just the way we're trying to just help each other out. That's the thing I really like about everybody who's watching this right now. Anybody who doesn't even have a channel. I feel like this community, we're all knowledge seekers in some kind of weird way. We all have different, obviously, personalities to bring to it. We all have different experiences. Some of us are maybe more snobby than others, or or whatever that looks like, but that ultimately I think is really, really cool, because we all have our own distinct personalities, and we're all helping each other out. I don't know about you, but I'm just really happy to be a part of this community.
Yeah, it was very much a gateway to me, like the film community. Like I said, the Chris Tuckmans and the Flick Pigs, and then I started to watch smaller channels. And obviously, like a couple of years ago, I met Daisuke for the first time, for example, and he's such an amazing guy, as you know, and all other like film channels that just know a lot about film. And nowadays, if I'm like trying to seek new channels, I try to find people that know more than me, but not to be too cocky. There's not too many people like that. Yeah, because I know more than most people. But
sure,
anyway,
no.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just gonna say that I kind of lost my train of thought. But what was I gonna say? That now I watch like film channels more for entertainment, because I usually like when people recommend me something, like I know those films already, because I do like continuous research on my own too. So I really know the films that I need to see, even though I haven't seen them yet, but I have like a huge watch list, and I just know that what I need to see even without recommendations. But I'm more interested about like people having their own takes on films, like reviews and analyzing films, because I know that kind of background information on my own already now that I've been into these snobby films for a few years now. So yeah.
Well, it's an awesome thing to continue to do, and I think I would echo that, that getting to know people's hot takes, or even the way that they kind of analyze films are definitely something that's a little bit more rare, because you're not able to, I mean, yeah, you might know the synopsis of a film, you already might know most of the background already, but you want to kind of see if you have a friend, right, who has a completely different take from you, then that's something interesting. You're like, well, why did you think that? And like it just helps your knowledge building, I think.
Yeah. But sometimes you can get a bit angry though, like if somebody criticizes your favorite films and stuff,
yeah.
And for example, there are some like mainstream directors that I really can't get the appeal for them, like Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg. So I really can't stand people when they praise those directors. I mean, I won't go shout them down or anything like that, but it just can get a bit annoying sometimes. Because
Sure.
I really think that it might be just up to the ignorance of the person, that they just haven't kind of developed that knowledge, and they haven't gone further from the American cinema from the last couple of decades, and then they might think that something like The Dark Knight is the greatest film of all time. But if you compare that to some of the best films of all time, like Seven Samurai or something like that, I don't think it really compares. But obviously people can have their own opinions, and I'm all for different opinions, but sometimes it can get a bit cringy. Yeah.
I know, I get it too. As like we were saying earlier, with just the love of extreme music, I can very much feel that similarity between us, with just like why haven't you gotten further with this? So but that's the other thing too about being human that I think is really, really cool, that we're able to experience things completely different. Some of us, maybe get frustrated by the fact that, the complacency of normalness is just too easy to obtain. But overall, I'm just happy to be here. That's the development of my own life, and I'm just happy to be able to talk to people like you, and just people of all walks of life, because that's what I love about this community.
Yeah, me too. I mean, even though I just criticized some things a bit, overall I love our community, especially this kind of sub-community of the kind of people that actually know a lot about film. I mean, I don't really care for the people who only watch American films from the post-70s. I won't learn anything new from those guys. But I love how this kind of criterion part of the film community. So you and Elliot and Daisuke and all those guys, I really enjoy their stuff. And even with the mainstream type of persons, I mean, you just have to realize that people just are different, and some people just watch films as an entertainment. They are not looking to kind of analyze every detail of the film, and that kind of, maybe they even have more of an enjoyable film journey in some ways, because they just look for the entertainment and not just this shot wasn't right or stuff like that. They don't have to analyze everything, and I even watch the flick pick even today sometimes, because I like his sense of humor, but his taste in film is completely different from mine. Currently, obviously, he doesn't watch any world cinema basically, and
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just happy that I was able to talk to you, man, and I hope that people enjoyed this conversation, because I can think of so many ways that this there's these different sparks of a conversation where where we could have had, and I honestly want to see in the comment section down below if you had any more questions. If you're watching this right now, I'm talking to the audience, who anything that we mentioned you might be interested in more. And I'm actually curious about that. But I had a really good time talking to you, SJS. So where can we find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And so you can find me on YouTube on a couple different channels. So you can see, my main channel is called SJSFilms. So I started it already a couple of years ago, and I've nowadays been pretty consistent with it, but we'll see in the future. But I do all kinds of videos there. And then the thing that I would want you to go there even more, it's my podcast, which is called Folgers and Ashes, and that's a reference to the Big Lebowski, if you didn't know, because they take Donnie's ashes in a Folgers container. So yeah, so that's the reference. But anyway, so that podcast is with my best friend, which we met on Daisuke's channel, like I said, and so that's a separate channel. So I would like if you could go there and maybe subscribe and check it out, even more than my own channel. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put that in the description down below, and that's a beautiful title for a podcast, by the way.
Yeah, it was my idea. So.
It's a good movie, and also a good reference. And I'm before I end this this conversation with you, I think it's really cool that you found one of your best friends just from this community. I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's seriously like one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Like me and him are like so close. Like we are pretty much identical in our opinions, and we like agree on everything. Basically, we have the same problems. Kind of, yeah. We are just so similar for some reason. And it was so odd that all the kind of things led to us meeting. Yeah.
Well, that's
and
just
then
really
we end
cool.
up being so similar, but anyway, yeah.
Where is he located? If like not, I'm assuming in England.
Yeah, he's in England. Yeah.
Oh, he's in England. Okay, well that's cool. So have you been able to meet?
We haven't met in real life actually yet.
Because of everything going on.
Yeah, but we talk every day basically. So.
Sure. Well, that's awesome, man. And that's ultimately I would like to meet I would like to meet you someday in person. I'd like to meet pretty much everybody that I've seen on YouTube, because I think it's really cool. How many people around the world watch this? And like Japan and Daisuke's case, in England, maybe even back home in Finland, Canada, United States. There's all these types of people that I would love to meet.
And to me, it was an honor to be your first European guest, I guess. And I'm probably the first and the last Finnish guest that you will ever have. Obviously, it's just a small country, so probably there won't be too many opportunities to speak to other Finnish people. But yeah.
Well, I hope so. I mean, this is the gateway, right? So I hope that there's more people around the world. That's the thing about world cinema. That's why we all like world cinema, is because we like learning about other different places and other cultures, and I think that's really cool. So.
Yeah, and it would be cool if you could get Daisuke or Elliot sometime to this series or something. Yeah.
Well, I'm not spoiling anything, but that might happen in the future. So,
yeah,
it'd be great. Well, any last words to say about your film journey?
Well, go watch some Finnish films. Yeah,
go watch some Finnish films.
Not many people have seen any Finnish films, so. There is one director even in the Criterion collection. He's called Aki Kaurismäki, and there are many of his films on the Criterion collection. Obviously, you have a huge Criterion collection already, so maybe you can sometime get some of his films.
I have one. I think it's one of his French films, maybe.
Yeah, Le Havre.
Yeah, Le Havre. I have that one. It's in my queue. I haven't seen it yet, but I have Kaurismäki's work a little bit.
He's very similar to Jim Jarmusch. They are actually friends in real life, so yeah.
Well, I like Jim, so
yeah. So it's the very deadpan kind of minimalist. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Well, wonderful. Well, I hope everyone had a good time and had a good conversation with SJS and me, and I hope you could follow along with your own film journey. I hope that you can ask some questions down in the comment section down below. I hope that this sparks some thoughts of your own. I'd like to give you all a chance to check out his channels down below that podcast as well, Folgers and Ashes, and SJSFilms on YouTube. And yeah, so thank you so much again, SJS, for coming on to the channel and sharing your film journey. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. It was great, and I'm not SJSing around.